Hello, I'm Faith Appeal, and this is the OOPS DevSlop Show. On today's show, Chloé Messdaghi, VP of Strategy at Point3 Security, will cover burnout, how to overcome it, and how to prevent it from happening. But first, a short message from today's show sponsor, Dojo with Renan.
Cloud and DevOps skills are in huge demand nowadays. We keep hearing buzzwords like Terraform, Kubernetes, Docker, Envoy, Vault, and Nomad. But with new technologies constantly emerging, how can you keep up and stay up to date? To learn modern technologies, you really need to use them in real projects. Some people might prefer to make new connections and learn together, but others might prefer to learn through live stream sessions or even through on-demand videos. That's why I created Dojo with Renan, an online platform to teach you how to build solutions using modern technologies. Subscribe to and follow my channel on YouTube and Twitch to start learning today.
Hello again, I'm Tanya Janka, and you are here for the OWASP DevSlop show. DevSlop, like sloppy DevOps. And we are here where we meet industry practitioners who join us to teach us something new once, twice, sometimes thrice per month. If you are new here, please make sure to subscribe to our channel. And if you are enjoying the show, click the thumbs up button. Also, enable your notifications so you get messages from us so you never miss a show. Note that all the important information that we're going to talk about today will be added to the description box below on the video so that you don't lose anything. So let's jump right to it. Today, our guest is Chloé Messdaghi. Chloé Messdaghi is the VP of Strategy at Point3 Security. She is an InfoSec advocate and an activist who strongly believes that information security is a humanitarian issue. Besides her passion for security, for information security, she wants to keep people safe and is empowered online and offline. She is driven to fight for hacker rights as the co-founder of Hacking is Not a Crime. She is also the founder of WeAreHackerz, formerly known as WomenHackerz, and the president and co-founder of Women of Security, WoSEC. She's a podcaster for ITSP magazine's The Uncommon Journey, and she runs the Hacker Book Club. She does it all. But again, before we meet Chloé, first let me introduce you to my co-hosts for today. So in the background, running all the engineering, being very modest, is Nancy Gariche, and she is usually the host of this show, but she is running all the amazingness today. And then we have Carissa Clifford, Faith Opio, Tanya Janka, that's me, and Nikki Becker. So welcome, Chloé. What's the agenda for today? Welcome, Chloé.
Hi, everyone. How's it going?
Awesome. Hey. We are very happy to have you.
It's lovely to be here. I've been so excited to do this show with you guys.
It's my pleasure.
Well, today we're going to cover burnout. I would usually do slides, but I wanted to have more of a relaxed feel. So you guys are aware of what burnout is, what are the symptoms of burnout, and also if you are right now in burnout, what you can do immediately to fix that. And I know all the lovely people that are hosting me right now will interrupt throughout the whole thing. So I'm very excited for this because it keeps me on point. So if you have any questions at all, just let me know. So the first thing I want to talk to you is, what exactly is burnout? You might be wondering. So the textbook definition, I'm going to read it for you, is burnout is a state of emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by excessive and prolonged stress. It occurs when you feel overwhelmed and emotionally drained and unable to meet constant demands. Now, one of the things you should note about burnout, let's just put a current example right now. I live in the US, and 2020 has been an interesting year. Not only do we deal with COVID, but we're also dealing with election. So for the past few days, many of my friends and family have been stressing so bad to the point where they cannot sleep. But it's been this prolonged stress for some time, like weeks, months, and whatnot, because who's going to win? And so the voting and the counting, all of that has prolonged even more stress. And so because of that, it interfered with their sleep. It interfered with their eating patterns. It may have caused them to drink a little bit more. It also probably affected them in other ways, because if they're not sleeping, they might get some headaches. They might be reaching for the junk food a little bit more. They just cannot focus on anything else because they're still wondering what's going on. So they feel like their battery has kind of drained a little bit, because they just need to know at this point, because do I need to leave to Canada, or can I stay? And that is one of those things that you're just wondering about the entire time. But the good news is that there's moments where things are lifted from your plate, and then that burnout, that feeling is gone. And then you feel like this sense of relief, like I feel like my battery's fully charged. That's an example of burnout. And it's not it's not just that itself, but all around the world, people are dealing with burnout. And some people, they never dealt with it their entire life, but now they are, because of what COVID-19 has done to our world around everywhere. The reality of it, unless you're in New Zealand, I wish I was in New Zealand, but the thing is that in reality, we have a huge emotional burnout going on. And like I stated in the example, how you can tell you're having emotional burnout with COVID-19 is that like you get this fear, this worry of constantly like something is going to happen. You're going to affect yourself. You're going to affect a friend, a family member. So we're constantly concerned. I know at the beginning of COVID-19, and I'm pretty sure many of you also had this really hard, feelings that I might be a carrier and I might hurt someone, and that person might die from me because all I did was be around them. That's heavy stuff. That's not your normal stuff, right? Just by meeting someone, you're like, okay, I just met this person. All right. But this is a time where like you meet that person, you could get something or you could transmit something, and you won't even know until days later. So for 14 days, you're freaking out whether or not you got COVID or you gave it to someone else. And that is stressful, where we're worrying about our friends or family all the time. Not just that, also the financial situation. Am I going to keep my job? Or you've lost your job, and then trying to find a job in the middle of a pandemic. So there's a lot of reasons why emotional burnout is something we need to talk about, because COVID-19 has brought that to the surface. For the first time ever this year, people are now starting to realize mental health plays such an important role, is as important as your physical health. So if you have a broken bone, people see, okay, you're injured. But if we have something going on mentally, that's not very apparent to the everyday person. And that's the thing, is that for the longest time, employers didn't really take in consideration about burnout or, depression, anxiety. But now they understand that that is part of being human. And we're not robotic. We are humans, and we have flaws. We have lots of flaws. But the thing is one of the things we need to just remember is that if you have any signs of emotional burnout with COVID, it's going to be probably the fear and worry consumes you, in the sense that you're not sleeping well, or you're having the inability to process information or to be able to sit back, relax, and whatnot. Also changes in your eating patterns. You may be getting weight this year, or you might be losing weight this year, but you're doing either or most likely this year. Also seeing your mental health around you, your family. Like, I'm pretty sure we've all had one of those calls of a friend or family just suddenly like freak out on a call or break down crying on a call. And the last thing you're like, I'm not trained in this. I'm not a therapist. Help. What do I do? And then that puts extra weight on you also, because you're trying to take care of another person when you already are, your battery is like this low. So the thing to note about that you also want to be very careful about is that there has been an increase of tobacco use, recreational drugs as well, and also alcohol. So we have been seeing a lot more people this year going towards the alcoholism. So it's really important is that if you're doing these social happy hours online, don't ask what each other is drinking. That might actually help a situation where they don't feel like they have to drink something. So there's different things that you can do. But I want to talk to you and give you some real examples of how you know you're burnout besides COVID-19. And it might come like in a different case where you're driving your car and you need to merge into the left lane. And when you're trying to merge into this left lane, the thought goes through your mind, what happens if I don't look in my mirrors? What happens if I don't look? Because then if I get in a car accident, I don't have to do that thing. I don't have to go and do that job. I don't have to do that assignment. I don't have to get that project done. I can get full out of everything because I have a valid excuse. That is actually common, believe it or not. But usually the number one sign if you're heading into a burnout phase is that it used to take you like a couple minutes to respond to an email. Now it's taking you 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, a whole day, sometimes a couple days to a short email. And so now your inbox is flooded and you're overwhelmed. That's another one. Another sign of someone being burned out is that your friends and family are calling you, but when they're calling you, you're ignoring, not because you're busy, it's because you just can't do it. In a sense that like you have so much on your plate, you're so overwhelmed that you cannot pick up the phone or text your friend back because you just know you cannot handle it because you're worried that it's going to give you more things on your plate and you already feel like you're trapped and drowning. And speaking of emotions, one of the things with burnout is the emotions of feeling that you're trapped. You feel empty. You feel like you can go from extreme sadness to extreme anger really, really fast. And that's usually some signs that you see with your friends and family or your colleagues when they're burned out. It's like suddenly you're in a meeting and then Tom just gets really angry in the middle of nowhere. And you're like, whoa, Tom has never gotten angry before like that. There's reasons why people are burned out. And also another sign of knowing you're burned out is the concept of procrastination. But the procrastination that we used to do in college was more like, okay, I know the deadline and it's going to help me focus to get that paper done. So I'm going to do it then. That was a different procrastination versus like when you're burnt out. When you're burnt out, it's more of like you'll try to find a way to push that date out further and further, or you might just miss it and it gets worse and worse because you missed the deadline. The thing is that you need to understand is that when you're burnt out, it literally feels like you are on low battery mode. You're not 100% you, you're like 10% you. And that's the thing you have to understand when you're burned out, is that you can't be there for everyone at the same time. But like I said, the one thing you can know when you're burned out also is that you're drinking a little bit more caffeine than you used to. So say, for example, you used to drink only 1 cup of coffee. Now you're drinking like 3 cups of coffee. Or maybe you changed your water and your coffee to Red Bull so you could get it even stronger. So then now instead you can see sounds. I mean, it's up to you if you want to do that. But the thing is that when you're burned out, you're going to be leaning towards alcohol too. And I want to talk about this because a lot of time when we're stressed, and you can tell the difference between stress and burnout, is if I drink a glass of wine, I'm going to feel relaxed. I'm going to feel chill. I might even take a bubble bath and I feel relaxed and chill and zen and whatnot. But if I'm burned out, it doesn't matter how much glasses of wine I do or how many bubble baths I take, it's still there. It hasn't reduced at all. It's still very present. That's the difference between burnout and stress. Stress is you can deal with it. Healthy stress, okay. Burnout is when you have prolonged stress. And then the thing is that if you don't treat burnout or take the steps to treat it, then you end up having depression and anxiety. So it's really important is that you nail that as soon as possible because it can become a lot worse. One of the other things to note is not just alcohol, but if you are into marijuana or pot or whatnot, you might be indulging yourself a little bit more on that. Be careful. You want to just make sure that, I know it's a hard time. We're either bored or we need distraction, but also be aware that you're doing that to you and your body. And so when you do take in any of these things, the thing you should know, it does change a little bit how you feel the next day. With drinking, for example, the next day you might feel lower in emotions. You might feel a little bit more down the next day. So these are things to keep in mind on that, is don't overindulge, and keep it simple where, like, for example, I will drink 3 glasses of wine throughout the week. These are the days that I'll do it. And same if you are in a place where it's legalized, you can also do the same thing. The thing is, have it scheduled out. Salty and sweet foods as well, you're going to be going towards it just whenever you're stressed. We always do that, right? When we're stressed, like, I need a pint of ice cream. Or when you're like, I need to eat all the chips, maybe french fries too. Maybe I should get that ice cream too. Thing is, just know when you're stressed, you're going to stress eat. The other thing is just to note, you're always going to feel tired. Like, no matter what you do, you're just going to feel so tired. Exhaustion is one of those things. Like, I could sleep for like 9 hours, and then when I wake up, I still feel really tired. That is a sign right there, is when you're not sleeping properly, or you're getting plenty of sleep, but it's just not doing anything. Now, I just want to let you guys know that I'm not a therapist here, and I'm not a doctor. But the one thing you should keep in mind is that if your vitamin D levels are low, your vitamin Bs are low, and your iron is low, either one of those, you will have the exact same symptoms as burnout. I know, right? Isn't that crazy? But that's the reality of it, is that your nutrition does dictate how you're going to be feeling mentally too. So what's really important is to see a doctor to get your vitals checked, because last year I thought I had burnout, but really what happened was that I was a little bit low on the iron. So I upped my iron, and then I was totally fine within a couple of weeks. So the thing is that you need to know where you stand nutrition-wise. Now, how to prevent burnout, we'll talk about that, and then we'll go into the very, very dark side of burnout, which is basically what you do when you have it. But how to prevent it, there's some tricks that you can do at this moment. So if you're at the very bare minimum of feeling burned out, these will be very helpful for you, but also to recognize if you're burned out, because the problem is we don't know how to have better self-awareness, which is one of those things that you would think that we would be, but in reality, we're totally distracted 24/7. So how do we really know internally what's going on with us? So how to prevent, always people will say to you, exercise, eat a balanced diet, practice good sleep habits, ask for help. But the reality of it is that it's a lot harder than that right now, because for some of us, we can't go to a gym. So getting exercise is hard. Also, going running outside might be challenging depending on where we live. So exercise is not always an easy thing. However, you could do things is like get on YouTube and learn how to dance. You could definitely get some exercise. The thing is, you want to get your heart beating, right, every day. So if you can, get a treadmill, do some heavy walking, speed walking. That's going to be really helpful. Eat a balanced diet, meaning like, no, I don't have to tell you what is healthy or not. You already know at this point. So try your best. Have a cheat day. And if you fall off that wagon, it's okay. Just be okay with yourself at that moment. Practice good sleep habits is another one. You know, when you're on devices, you should definitely be off of all devices at least 1 hour before bed. That will help you tremendously. But also if you're struggling to sleep, you know, there's also melatonin. It will help you try to get to that sleeping point. Just take it about 30 minutes before bed, and it should start slowly kicking in. But once again, turn off all devices, just be away from devices for 1 hour before bed. But the one thing you can always do is always ask for help. And that's the thing, is that I think a lot of times we're afraid to ask for help, or we don't want to put weight on someone else. But in reality, we have to sometimes. Now, having self-awareness, it might be very hard, but I'm going to teach you some tricks how to have self-awareness. The first thing you should be doing is journaling. It's very cliche, but when you journal, it happens to be like you'll write in your journal, and then you go back your previous post, and you'll see the exact same thing, like saying over and over. You'll start seeing these words coming out saying you're feeling trapped, or you feel isolated, you feel alone, you feel empty, you feel like you're drowning. You want to catch that, because that's letting you know you're burned out. So journaling is really helpful. If you could do it every day, great. If not, once a week, sure. The thing is keeping an eye on how you're feeling is so important. And you want to do it in a closed room where no one can bother you, and just journal, write out everything that you're feeling, because in reality, you'll find out a lot about how you're feeling from journaling and reading your entries before. Now, the other thing you can do is take a break. So everyone knows that I usually take one day off from everything. That means I turn off my devices. That means I get off completely. That means getting off of social media too. The reason for that is you need that one day where you disengage with your industry. Take that day to focus on you, your friends, your family. You always want to learn how to paint or play a guitar or something. This is the time to do it. So do it one day per week. Get at least at one day in. And if you can't because you have kids and all that, or there's other reasons why, try to do at least 4 hours once a week. That's going to be really helpful for you to disconnect, because that helps you regain everything. Because the reality of it is, when you're really burnt out is when your work life and your personal life are like this. So if your work and personal life is like this, you need a break. Okay.
So question, you brought up social media, right?
Yeah.
I don't know, like everyone's sort of not together and people are on social media talking to each other, and like that might be the lifeline that a lot of us have. Like, how do you balance that out? What's the story with social media in this kind of time?
So the thing about social media is that sometimes it's a dumpster fire.
That's kind of what I wanted to say,
right?
But I was trying to say it in a nice way.
Right. I mean, I remember right when COVID-19 started happening, and I talked to one of my friends, Ryan Louie. He's a psychologist. And the thing is that what he told me was like, Chloe, whatever you do, only allow yourself to look at the news this time, and that time, only for short periods of time, because it will take over you, which is true. So what I try to do is don't look at the news first thing in the morning. Try it at times where you know that you can indulge yourself and for a short period of time. That's kind of what you want to do with social media. To be honest with you, I'm never really on Twitter. The only time I'm on Twitter is if someone DMs me or if I'm tagged in something. Pretty much all my tweets are already programmed to go out and scheduled. And the reason for that is like, I can't deal with it sometimes. So it's important to understand is that you have a digital life, but you also have a physical life too. And it's important to know that sometimes you need to take a break from everything. Take a break from everyone if you need to, because that's how you recharge your batteries, is when you get your alone time.
Yeah.
Chloe, there's sorry, Nikki, I just wanted to jump in. There's some really cool stuff going on in the chat between Adrian and Travis, and they're talking about, well, both perhaps a need to go back to traditional alarm clocks, and Didar had said that also, keeping our device away from us at bed is hard. And then a really interesting chat about how it's sometimes less socially acceptable for men to take care of themselves, to pull back. Wondering if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, I mean, I think the thing is that if we're going, depending how you are and how you're raised and your culture and whatnot, I would say that in Western culture, a lot, I would say, and actually in many other cultures, it's very bad for men to show any weakness, in a sense. Like, it's bad for them to show any emotions. It's bad for them to cry. And the thing is that crying is a release. You need to cry. If you're feeling sad, cry. If anyone makes a comment saying you're less manly because of that, you know what? Forget that person. Because in reality, they're probably deep down inside wanting to cry and jealous of you. The reality of it is that you need to cry. Emotionally and everything, you need to be aware of your surroundings. You need to be aware of how you're feeling and feel that emotions. If you're feeling sad, it's okay to be sad. If you're angry, it's okay to be angry. Because the thing is, you need to feel those emotions. You can't just I'm going to watch a movie and distract myself. It's still going to be very much there. So you have to deal with it. You have to process it. And the best way how to do it is when you have that alone time. Because the last thing you want to do is lash out at anyone, right? And that's the thing, is that we have to be comfortable with the uncomfortableness of ourselves and how we're feeling. And it's really hard to do that. Now, when it comes to the other conversation about having a alarm clock, I agree. One of the things that I always do is I keep my phone far, far away in the bedroom so I don't get any temptation to like check it or whatnot. I have an alarm set and it will go off. The one of the things that is really good that you can practice is that I'm also one of those people that like to keep a to-do list. So to-do lists are really helpful because it lets you know what's on your plate, how much is on your plate, and what you need to do to get rid of those. If that means delegating to someone else who should be able to do that, then that means that. If it means I need to get through all these things, then that means you need to get through all those things. I remember the first time I did a to-do list this year, and it's 5 pages long. Now I have it at less than 1 page. So the thing is, you want to be able to know how much you are dealing with and everything. And that could be your work, personal projects, anything like that you want to put on that to-do list. Now, the thing is that usually when you're going to bed, some people are like, oh, I'll just have a to-do list on my phone. Don't do that. Don't do that, because this is what's going to happen. You have your phone near your bed and you're about to go to sleep and you're like, I forgot to send that email. Oh, that's a great idea. Why didn't I think about that? It happens in the middle of the night or right before you go to sleep, and then you go on your phone and you're like, I'm going to make a note of this. And then you know what happens after you make a note of it? Let's see what's going on Twitter. Oh, look, I got an email. I'm going to do my emails now. Don't do that. So the thing is, having it on a piece of paper and a pen is going to be like your best friend. So carry that to-do list, have it near your bed. So if you did wake up in the middle of the night and you need to write something down, write it down. Because the more you get out and release that's in your head, the less clutter you have, the more focused you can be. And this is really helpful when you're trying to prevent things from like burnout and whatnot.
Hey, we have a question in the chat that I think Faith was going to talk about it.
Okay.
I think we were going to talk about if irritability is a symptom of burnout, and then I think she had comments to share. So maybe you could answer the question, and then Faith could chat with you.
Sure. I would say that irritability is definitely a symptom of burnout. But remember that some of these are also not burnout, it's just feeling emotions and whatnot. So it's important to know that if the person is irritable or yourself, you're feeling very irritable, but you remember all those other symptoms I shared with you. So like your inbox is overflooded, taking longer to respond, or you're feeling like you want to be disconnected from your friends and family by ignoring their phone calls. These are, or you're not meeting your deadlines, or you just feel overwhelmed no matter how much sleep you get, you feel exhausted, then yes, I would say you have burnout on that front. But yes, it's okay. But also you might not be going through burnout. You might be at the beginning state of burnout. So.
Chloe, I was actually looking at, I think it was a YouTube or a TEDx talk, whereby they were talking about the 12 stages of burnout.
I have a long time ago.
Seen that talk?
That's how I knew I had burnout.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that irritability was actually one of those stages, early stages. And in the stages, they actually distinguish between stress and burnout. I know you've explained this, but I have a difficult time understanding what's the difference. When do I know that I am stressed, and when do I know that I am burnt out? Because the line is not clearly defined for me, and so I have a difficult understanding that.
Remember in the example I said that if you are stressed, you could have a glass of wine or you could take a bubble bath and you feel a little bit better. Burnout is that you could drink all the wine in the world, take all the baths in the world, it wouldn't do anything. So the thing is that burnout happens when you have prolonged stress. So stress that hasn't been resolved. That's what burnout ends up being. It's when you are stacking upon stack of more things, and you just feel like you're trapped. You feel overwhelmed. Stress, in a sense, like you could feel overwhelmed a little bit, but it's temporary. Burnout is that you don't see a future. And that's why it's really scary, because the more severe your burnout is, the more you're going towards depression and anxiety.
And specifically in cybersecurity, right? We do have like roles like, incident response or technical support, where you are always putting off the fire. And sometimes, it can get overwhelming, and you have to, you have a case after a case, fire after a fire, and you never see positive. Can that also cause stress or burnout? Can that?
Yeah, I would say that so if you work in cybersecurity, the thing is, or any job where you're on call 24/7, which is what our industry is. In other words, like 24/7, we have to be aware of everything. We could be in the middle of a Thanksgiving meal, and if we get a text message saying, we need you, you already know that you have to have your phone near you at all times. And that's the thing is that in our industry, a lot of people don't know that, is that it's 24/7 around the clock. That is already knowing that that's in the back of your mind, that you can be on call at any time or any hour. That's stressful. The other thing is that not just that, but we're also, if you're on security teams, the chances are you're also very short of personnel. So it's basically you're doing like 3 jobs as one person, or you're doing 3 times the work of a normal person. And you have more responsibilities because if this is not patched in time, or that becomes a situation of a breach for a company. And so it's so much weight on you, because a lot of people don't understand this, is that security is super essential. It is as essential as your sales and marketing, but unfortunately, a lot of companies still don't want to give as much funding towards that. And so that's why you have a shortage of personnel and resources, is because you have to try to keep convincing over and over to your board to invest in your security, because they don't understand. If you have a breach, you've lost the trust of your customers. Not just that, if you've had a really bad breach, you could also slow down production. And then that happens to be situations, if you're a very beginning startup, that you might actually go under. So it's so important is to understand that security is so crucial. But you have to invest in your people too, because it's so overwhelming. And the hard part of this too is that even when we say we're taking time off, it doesn't actually mean we're taking time off, because we're still on call in case of emergencies. And that's the hard part, is that even when we want to take time off, it could become a very hard situation, because that means you're giving more work to your colleagues. Or you're worried that something's going to happen by you taking time off, because no one can fill in your shoes. So that is a huge stress to always have, because that's the reason why I think we go and burn out a lot more, is that us trying to take time off is like impossible sometimes. And it's also hard when we do take time off for us to be completely on vacation. And that's the one thing I've realized in cybersecurity at the very beginning of my first job in security. I was on a vacation with my father, and we were traveling in Morocco. And I remember I started getting phone calls at like 5 a.m. there saying, Chloe, I need you to do this. Chloe, I need you to do that. Chloe, I need you to do this and that. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm on vacation. Like, I'm on vacation. I'm in Morocco. I don't have Wi-Fi here. What do you want me to do? And I remember my dad turning to us like, what is going on in your industry? You can't take time off. They don't understand or respect that. You have a personal life and you have a work life. They should know the difference. And when you're on vacation in Morocco, they should not be bothering you. And I remember that situation really well, because that literally painted the picture of what cybersecurity is all about, is that you are on call 24/7. It is annoying. It's nerve-wracking. It's stressful. And yeah, it's one of those things. That's the reason why we're getting more burned out. And the reason we're getting more burned out isn't because we keep getting more and more responsibilities, is because we can't take time off. That's the issue there, is that we have to be better at this. We need to have managers that understand that you need to take time off, because if you can't take time off, you're only working like 10% of you. And that's also a bad thing in security, because if you're only powered by 10% your own battery, you're not going to be able to catch everything. And you're not able to do everything. Yeah. And it's so frustrating, because if only we could tell the board, and we tell them all the time, And CISOs are probably so angry most of the time. Let's be honest. Like majority of the time, they're like, they see, and we're giving Paul in sales this amount and marketing this amount, and then we're going to give this tiny little amount to security. Here you go. And as a CISO, you're like, are you kidding me? Just imagine how angry, right? Like, are you kidding me? Your people can take as much as they want. We can't even take one day off. And that's the situation we're in, is we can't take time off. And this is the same with developers too, right? As developers, if you're short on developers and you're really good at this one thing, you can't take time off either. It's one of those really annoying parts, is that they don't see us as robotic, but they treat us like robotic.
Yeah. Nikki has a question for you.
I was going to ask my own question, but you should just ask the chat questions. Let's get those out, if you want.
Nikki.
All right, I'm on.
You do it. You're on.
So, no, I'm just thinking, like, this isn't the first time people have been here, right? The medical industry, right? Do you know of any other industries that maybe like have solved this, or at least are more respectful of this and mindful of this and know how to manage this? I mean, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, no one's calling us to do brain surgery at 3 a.m, but somebody's calling somebody to do that, right? And so,
yeah. Well, with medical professions, they have a good number of days between where they don't do anything. But the thing is, they have these shifts that are really long, like 18-hour shifts. So the thing is to understand is, like, they're trying to figure out how to do it where they don't get burned out, because their job is life-saving. So they have to be on point. If they aren't, that's going to be bad for them and their patient. And so they understand that mental health plays a huge role. It's just all the other industries have not been doing that. And that's the problem. And I feel like in this year, companies and employers are starting to realize mental health plays a huge role. Because last year, when I would talk to companies like, what are you doing about mental health? They're like, what about mental health? I'm like, it's just as important as physical health. And they're like, Chloe, come on, man. Are you telling me someone who's like diabetic is the same as someone with depression? They have pills for that. And I'm just like, oh my God, help me. And that's the reality is because we're humans. I have to be honest, humans can be idiots in a way that, like, if we don't see it, then it doesn't exist. Well, the wind exists, the air exists. Like, I don't know what else to tell you here. And because they can't see it, they're not scared by it. Think about how COVID-19 would be different if, for example, instead of not seeing these germs out in there and the virus strands and all that, you saw zombies. You'd be scared then. And that's the reality, because people can't see it. They don't want to wear a mask. They don't believe in it. And that's a situation there, is that we are one of those really weird human beings that believe that if we don't see it, then we don't believe it. And that's why the earth is flat. And that's the reality.
Chloe, there are some interesting comments coming in the chat. Adrian and Travis are lighting it up over there. And so really cool engagement happening. And they're talking about quite a bit, like looking at trying to scale to Google on a 1K budget was something Adrian said, seeing that in DevOps as well as in security. And then also Travis made a really great point, like the
so much talking
to incorporate ownership culture, so that it's not just the security team who's responsible for security, that's shared across the entire company, and it's understood by those making the decisions around budget and the decisions around where time goes, right? Do you have any tips or strategies or things that you've helped companies do to share the burden of security so that these technical folks can actually try and separate home from work and take some time?
Yeah, I would say that this is going to sound terrible. You have to scare them out of their minds that a breach could happen at any moment. And the reason I say this is because there's complete apathy for everyone outside of security when it comes to security. That's why most of our time, our job is freaking out and stressing that someone in marketing, someone in operations is going to click on some malicious link, and then I have to spend my next few days dealing with that situation. That's the reality, is that as companies, we need to do better when it comes to training and having them understand the basics of security. They need to understand that every single person is a target at this time. Like a lot of times people are like, well, I'm not a target, so I'll just keep my passwords at, 18 characters. I'm not going to use a password manager because, if I use a password manager, then that one master password, someone could get that and get access to all my accounts. So I'm not going to use that. I'm not going to let an attacker get a hold of my information. I kid you not, these were the conversations that I had. Also, people not wanting to use 2FA because now they're like, I'm scared that they'll know my phone number. And then I'm just like, okay, what about a backup email? And they're like, I don't want to use a backup email because then the attacker is going to want to go in my backup email account. And it's so frustrating. And that is the most painful thing. If we could just get people to understand that they are a target, that would change things in so many ways, because it's always going to be like, this is a lesson you're going to have to learn. Until you experience it, you're not going to understand it. It's really frustrating.
Katissa? If we're trying to scare the crap out of everyone, so we're trying to scare the crap out of management so they pay attention to security, then how can we be relaxed? Does that make sense?
Yeah. The reality is that most of our friends, colleagues outside of like InfoSec world and whatnot, they don't understand the importance of security. They don't see themselves as target. And so they don't take it seriously. And the unfortunate bit is that we don't want to have to scare them to understand it, but there are definitely people with apathy. And the only way you're going to get them to change their mind is if you share personal stories of a time when there was a breach that happened. And it took this person who took down a company because it clicked on a link. This is important to share. The fact is we're not sharing that enough. And so that's one of the other issues. The other thing is that we need to do better when it comes to training our colleagues. So for example, right now, if they receive any emails around COVID-19, they're more likely to click on it. Because we are passionate about COVID-19. We want to know everything about COVID-19. We need to train them on that. They shouldn't check their emails if they've had a drink, or they shouldn't be checking their emails if they hadn't had their coffee yet. They should always double check for every document or link that's sent to them, and to look at the email address, look at the actual email address, not the name of the sender, to really see whether or not this is a threat. And I think until we have better training, that's just showing where we stand as a company on how we look and respect security.
I think something that's interesting too, Chloe, around that training piece. So I work with a lot of SaaS companies, often with the CTO who have security under their belt, or like the lead software developer with security also. And their job is so tough and so full. And a big part of it is trying to educate and influence up the rest of the C-suite or investors to allow them to invest in security. Yeah. And so what I've been seeing, and even if I think of my own learning in the space, when I first started in cybersecurity, a big wall of fear comes up for anyone who thinks of themselves as intelligent when we don't understand something. Yeah. So do you think that like part of it, just those really normal human emotions of I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing to protect my company. You know, I'm a SaaS CEO, so I should understand this. Do you think that that's part of what can get in the way? And maybe have you seen some success in how to break through those walls that prevent organizations from taking care of their talent?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a story. I can't tell you what company it is, but so basically what happened was that I was talking to a CEO of a company, and they're like, oh yeah, I know everything about security. I know everything about security. I'm like, okay, so how much of the funding do you have split between your marketing, your sales, and security? And it was super, super small. And I was like, okay. I'm like, is your company wide trained in phishing and whatnot? And they're like, yeah, I mean, we do this virtual program. They click through, throughout the whole thing, and they pass it, and all that. And I'm like, okay. So then at that moment, I decided to show him how easy it is to do. So what I did was that I sent him an email pretending to be his assistant. and he opened the email, he clicked on the link, and I immediately sent him a text message saying, by the way, go back to that email that you went to 2 minutes ago. This was the subject line. That could have been a really bad situation for you. And that's when he realized that, oh, wow, it's that easy. It's that easy to get someone to click on a link. It's so easy. And that's when he started realizing, he started going in panic mode. He's like, can you test out my assistant? Because I'm worried that she's not blocking people. So I test out the assistant. And what I did in this situation was that I had her print out a document and give it to him. So I attached like a PDF with a tracker and whatnot. And she knocks on his door and like hands him the PDF document saying, oh, this is what you wanted, right? And he's like, and then he called me up. He's like, okay, I'm really scared now. It's that easy to target people. I'm like, yeah. And people do this for a living.
So that's really interesting, because that's like a real life example of social engineering put into practice, and that helped. And in my mind, like, I certainly am a kinesthetic learner. I think for anything that's new, we have to touch, taste, feel. And it's interesting because Tanya's brought this up, and then still the folks in the chat talking about like, okay, this is all well and good. And also, how do we survive the now? Right? So like, we need people to learn and expand their minds and awareness, and we need to educate them. We still have $0 for a budget. So how do we take care of ourselves, acknowledging, and something that's coming to mind for me, Chloe, is what Nancy had said actually when we were chatting about this event, was security is a marathon. It is not a sprint.
Yep.
And so, you know, I know you mentioned journaling at the beginning, and I'm a massive journaler. Some people are, that's hooey business. They can't get there, right? And so I don't know if there are any tricks that you have where, when it feels like the weight is so heavy and the, you know, where we're going is so far away, is there a way of breaking that up for, hey, can I get a small win this week? And can I own that win and hold on to it? Or is there something that's worked for you whenever you haven't had the ability to do a social engineering activity to drive it home?
So 2 parts on this, on our response. The first response I would say on here is that ever since that test and whatnot, I tell companies to have various people try to test out their other friends and colleagues as well, with permission. Remember, nothing malicious, with permission. And I do this all the time at Point3 where I work, where I'll pretend to be someone sending out gift cards. And, you know, it's what keeps them aligned, because ever since they first experienced that, they realize, okay, I need to do better. So the thing is like, it's always good is to keep testing out your colleagues. And I always tell my colleagues to test me out too. It's so important that we keep testing each other out, so then we're aware that it can happen any moment and we're prepared for it. And that's the whole thing, is everyone needs to know what the structure is. If they get something malicious in email, what are they supposed to do next? And that's really important to do, is to make sure that it's company-wide, that everyone's practicing these practices. That's the one thing I'd always say, is just practice with your peers, get permission, of course, from, you know, your manager and their manager if you need to. But testing them out on this is going to change everything in your company, because they suddenly become aware that they could be that person who clicks on it and just brings hell to a company. So they need to understand that they could be a target too. So this is really good practice for them, is to teach them about phishing, how easy it is by doing it. And it's not always a fun one, because you don't want to be the one who's like, oh no, I was the one who clicked on the link. So it's one of those things, like, just also be aware that anyone would click on that link. And the reality is, even in security, we most likely will click on a link at some point. On the second part of your thing is that I hate to be the breaker of like more bad news in this whole conversation, but the only treatment for burnout is actually taking time off. So that's the hard part, right? Because we're in security, we can't really take time off. It's really hard. But the reality is, if we don't take time to unplug, that means get off devices, that means all that for a couple of days, we're never, ever going to fix the problem. And we still deal with burnout. So it's important if we get at least 3 business days off. So that means you want to take your Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, because that means that gives you 5 days of being away from InfoSec. That's what you need to do.
Yeah, another thing I think that we haven't yet hit on is that the domain of knowledge in this space is so vast, right? Like you could be, doing incident response, you could be a developer, you could be doing low-level programming or low-level defense. It just like, that's a huge domain of knowledge. And I think a lot of my peers are constantly on this knowledge acquiring treadmill, and that itself can be super prone to, I think that would just burn you out in general, let alone your day job and all the other things you have going on. And then, I think, for me personally, I think for a lot of my peers, knowing when to like, okay, chill, you don't really need to know Rust right now. Like, you could just let that one go, right? Maybe that's relevant for you in like 2 years, but right now just let it go, right?
Yeah.
How do you, obviously there's context that you have about what you need to know for your job, but how do you sort of slow that down? I think that's an interesting question to deal with, like, stress and burnout.
So remember that to-do list. I believe every single person should have that. And the reality of it is then you can also know what to prioritize. So that's the important thing. The other thing is having a to-do list for your work. So when you meet with your manager, have one-on-ones with them, make sure you go over all the things that you need to do, but also to prioritize it together, making sure you're both aligned. That's going to be really good for communication purposes, especially when you're not in an office and you can't see each other. And if you don't have one-on-ones with your manager, set one up. If you are a manager, set up one-on-ones with your team, each one individually. Try at least 15 minutes per week. And that's going to be really helpful. And I do recommend doing it on a Tuesday because it's the beginning of the week, but at least Monday is your day of catching up, usually from the weekend. But that's really important to do.
I have a question, and my question is that I want Faith to ask a question because I know she has one. There you go.
It wasn't actually a question. I was trying to add to the first point that you said, Chloe, whereby you were saying that we should test each other. But I think we should also keep in mind as security professionals that we're testing with the aim of educating, not with the aim of victimization.
Right.
Because I've experienced scenarios whereby, you test someone, but and then you're like, okay, so this person is the one who did this.
You do not want to do that. So, when you test people, you want to, not disclose names or anything. What you say is you give percentages that there was like this many people that clicked, these people did not. That's better. And then behind scenes, send a private DM to the person who did click on it saying, hey, I noticed that you did click on the thing and everything like that. And I want to talk to you about it. I just want to make sure that we're aligned so you are aware of what to expect in the future if you do receive an email like this again. And it would only take like 10 minutes of your time. So that's it, is that you want to keep it very private because you don't want to shame people publicly. They already feel the guilt when they click on it and like see that the enormous amount of people didn't click on it. There's guilt already associated, and that's enough as it is. You do not need to shout out like Paul and Sam and Rachel, they all clicked on the link. That's not going to be good. Don't ever do that.
And then, Chloe, I have a question, a personal question. What if you work in a department whereby, it's a high-paced department whereby it's kind of like you're expected to be working at this level, right?
Yeah.
But you feel that this level is too high for you, you're getting burnt out or stressed. But when you look at your peers, you also don't want to be, looked at as the person who cannot, accomplish things at the same level. So how would you handle that situation? How can you take a step back in that situation without necessarily it being detrimental to your career?
Right. So in situations like that, I think it's really good is to take a step back and see if it's actually you're mentally and emotionally are putting yourself down and thinking that you're not able to do that, because the reason you got that position was because people believe that you can do that. So it's really important to understand is like, are you dealing with a situation of imposter syndrome? That's one thing I would say is that many times it could be like that, where you think you can't do that job, but in reality you can, and you can. But there are times where you really don't know how to do this role, or you don't know how to do this job, and you have to learn everything, which is really annoying, because if anyone gives you a task to do and you have no experience in it, that's going to be really stressful, because it's going to take you time, energy to look into it. And it's also embarrassing to go up and approach someone and be like, hey, I have no idea how to do this, but you told me to do this and it's part of my job, and I'm really freaking out right now. And it's important to understand that there's times where you have to be okay that you're not going to be perfect. And you have to accept that. Because the reality is that if someone gives you more tasks to do that you have no experience in it, and you don't have a good manager, you're going to have to learn to say no and be okay with that. And one of the things is to know is that it's so important to have a good manager relationship and having those one-on-ones with your manager, because if they're like, we need you to do this thing, and you're like, I don't feel comfortable doing that because I have no experience in that, ask for them to coach you, mentor you, or to connect you with someone who can mentor you, so then you can rock that role. Having a mentor to help you in that particular moment is going to be critical for you and your development of your career. I always say it's okay to take on a challenge, but also note, do you have the time and energy of your already existing role? Remember, it's okay to say no. And usually when we're high performers, people give you more work, but it's always good is to say no if you need to. But having a mentor is going to be really helpful if you're trying to develop skills on the job. And having a manager help reach that part is important, because sometimes when they hire you, they want you to succeed in everything, and they already assume that you know 60% of the role, but you don't know that 40%. And so coaching is going to be needed. So that's when you need to step in and be like, I need to be coached on this, or mentored, or at least point me into certain directions so I know where to start. That's going to help you and reduce the stress on it. I hope that answers the question.
I wanted to jump in on that because it might be an unpopular opinion, but I also feel like sometimes we need to be conscious that not every area of cybersecurity is for you. And I'm afraid to talk about this sometimes because it sounds like gatekeeping. But, you know, like we're okay saying, you know, not everybody can be an astronaut, not everybody can be a surgeon, but also not everybody can be everything in cybersecurity. And I feel like sometimes the mismatch of skills, interest with what you're trying to pursue brings that stress. And taking the time to make sure that what the career you want actually matches your personality, your interest, can help you in managing your stress and your burnout. But it's hard to do that when you decide to say, hey, maybe I'm not good, or maybe I'm not made for offensive security. But when you say you're not a hacker, you're not cool, right? Like, so it's hard to identify what's good for you and not feel like you're not performing or not good enough.
Yeah, and it's true. There's going to be moments. The thing is, in security, there's so many different fields of interest, and you want to learn them all, which is good. You should know the basics of everything if you can, because it's cool to learn everything. But the reality is you also have to know that there's times where you don't do that. There's times where you cannot take on more, and you have to recognize when you've taken on too much. And that's why I said, like, the to-do list is going to be really important for you to know, is to know how much you're taking on and everything like that. But I think it's okay to, you know, it's okay to not know what you want to do next after whatever you are in right now. I mean, and eventually it becomes very clear. You find out what you're really good at and you do that instead. And you feel, and then there will be people that be like, well, why aren't you doing this now? You should be doing this because this would be good for you and your career. But at the reality, you know yourself better. You know what you're going to be excelling in a lot more than anyone else can. So it's important to know yourself. By knowing yourself, you have awareness of what you're capable of doing, but also you are aware of how much stuff you have on your plate already. But also it's important to know is that if you are curious to keep learning, that's wonderful. That means you're in a field that's good for you. Because when we are not bored in our industry, then that means that maybe this isn't the industry for you. But being constantly curious, wanting to learn new things, that's a beautiful thing. Not everyone has that in their careers. And so if you're feeling that way, congrats, you're in the right field. That's the one thing I'll tell you.
Well, it's been an hour. I just want to make sure, Chloe, that you've been through the content. If you had anything specific that you wanted to add to the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, really, really quick. And I'll wrap it up within less than 1 minute.
Oh, take your time.
Okay. Invest in yourself. The reason you're burned out is because you're not putting yourself first. And I know that sounds really weird because as humans, we want to be there for everyone as much as possible. But the reality is, you know, when you're on a flight and the instructions is, first, you put the air on yourself before you assist others. There's a reason why, because you cannot be 100% there for someone when you're not even 100% there for yourself. So it's important to understand is you need to invest in yourself. Take breaks, take time off. And you will always know if you're entering a burnout or you're in a path to burnout or you are burnout is when you ask yourself this question, am I balancing my work life with my personal life? If not, you need to take the steps forward. And I hate to tell you this, but there is only one way you can deal with burnout, and that's taking time off. There's no other remedies. There's no magical drug that's going to fix this. It's literally you have to take time off.
Wow.
Thank you, Chloe.
No
That
problem.
was great. Thank you for that. It was a great conversation. Everybody else, all the hosts, is there anything in the chat that we want to mention before wrapping up? Any questions that you think we should address?
I think that people wanted us.
Okay, let's go with Tanya first, and then we'll go with Faith.
I think people wanted us to tell them more about the co-hosts and that we should briefly introduce all of them because I didn't at the beginning so everyone knows. And now I think Faith should say what she was going to say.
Go ahead, Faith.
Yeah, so I think the two takeaways from this whole talk that are that resonate with me. The first one is get a mentor. I've been around for like 10 years and I didn't really use that personally until this last year. So it's a really important one. Get a mentor. And the second one is invest in yourself.
Good stuff.
My job is
Can you tell us more about investing in yourself, Faith? Like, what would you suggest as investing in yourself? Like taking time off, or like Chloe suggested, like having a day where you don't connect? Or do you mean invest in yourself, like learning or training yourself? Can you just tell us a bit more about what we could do?
Investing in yourself means, knowing, doing what is good for you as a person, right? So it's not, even though you're working, it's not that your life is not always just about work. You also have a life to live, right? So know when to take your time off. Know when the actions that you're going to do are good for you, are going to benefit you, and not just your employer. Yeah, that's what I mean by
put yourself first.
Yes, put yourself.
Cool. Very cool. Thank you. Just for our listeners who might not read into it enough.
Perfect. Anybody else? Anything, Cassia, Nikki, that you think we should wrap up with?
So one of my quick tips, I'll say, having been through workplace burnout before, I used to work in mental health before joining cybersecurity, and something that blew my mind at that time, I found this, I've kept it above my work desk. So this is like a cute little animated visual of a car that's like well washed, taken care of, getting regular oil changes, all good. Right? This is a car that needs to be washed. Maybe hasn't been to the garage for a while. This is one that, is in trouble, right? And this is one that it's gone, it's over. So this is burnout. And we want to do whatever we can to avoid that. And so for me, we can all be different, right? Sometimes it means we take an actual sick day and we stay in bed, and that's what we need. Sometimes it means we need to go see a therapist and we need to talk about anxiety. Sometimes it means we need a career change. Sometimes it means we need a real conversation like what Travis, Adrian, these folks are talking about, Mohan in the chat, about, I have this many things on my plate, and if you want me to add one more thing, what's going to leave my list of responsibilities now in order to take that on? So I think that visual, it really helped me at a time when I was on the fringe of burnout and I had no idea, just the concept that we need to care for ourselves on a regular basis, and it's preventative maintenance. So journaling, reflecting within, yoga, walks outside, time with friends, however we can make it happen. If that's part of our everyday, it can make it easier to know when we're burnt out, right? So I think I just wanted to share that. And such a great conversation. So exciting to see some cool people from the DevSec Fridays community we have at Software Secured too. So thanks for this.
Awesome. So before we go, Nikki, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, exercise, I think that's the one way that burnout can be really well managed. Your bodies are meant to move. If you can move it, you should move it. And the other thing is, I don't know, it works for me. Try to learn a topic that has nothing to do with InfoSec. There's a universe of other knowledge out there. Like, I just got a telescope. I'm trying to figure out what's going on what's all above us and all around us. That's a topic that's like profoundly interesting. It has nothing to do with InfoSec. And, just connecting random dots can help you just get perspective. And I think a lot of times that's what you need, perspective. If you look up at the stars, you're going to totally get perspective.
That's so true. I always feel, Nikki, when I see you, you're always back from a run.
I'm like decked out on my NASA
every single time. I'm just like, she's back from a run. And you always know things about like a random topic. So it shows that you're investing time in other things in cybersecurity, and that's great. And it shows so you're practicing what you're preaching. That's awesome. So before we leave, I just wanted to mention what we have planned for you for the next few weeks. Let me put that here. Okay, so on the 15th, November 15th, we had Clint Gibbler talking about SEMGRAP coming on the show. We're a huge fan here on the show of Clint, and we're excited to have him coming. And on the 18th, we also have a workshop on DAST. It's vendor neutral. Please RSVP if you want to join. We're actually we actually enabled the waiting list because we have quite a few people, but we'll see if we can put more people in the workshop, but that's on the 18th. If you want to know all about that and how to register, follow us on social media, wherever you can find us, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Meetup is a good spot because you can see what we have coming up. So that's what I wanted to say before we wrapped up. Thank you, everyone. That was great. That was fantastic. Thank you, Cassia. But Tanya, you actually mentioned that you wanted to introduce. We didn't spend time to talk about the co-hosts that we brought in today and to say thank you before we leave. So Cassie, before we leave, can you tell us about you and what you do for Software Secure, please?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. And thanks, Chloe. Such a good topic. Totally killing it, lady. So I work with Software Secured. We're an application security firm based in Ottawa. We work primarily with growing SaaS startups and scale-ups. And I'm a director of sales and marketing. I'm also our only sales resource, only customer service person, only marketing person. I do accounts receivable. We're a startup, right? So I'm the only person who's non-technical on the team, which means I work really closely with everybody to understand what we're doing and to try and help our clients. And then I also do some career coaching on the side as well with my own business, and that's launching this week. And so that's been a huge tank filler for me to avoid burnout with my full-time work, to make sure I have intrinsic value that's always coming in. And I'm putting that A-type overachiever energy in another place. So happy to be part of this community. Thanks, Nancy, and Tanya, Nikki, Faith, Chloe, such a great experience.
Thank you for joining us today. You were great with helping us with the chat and with the topics, and I hope you come back and join the conversation again. And Faith, what about you? Can you tell us a bit about you? I know that you joined the team. You'll be coming back for a few different shows, so please tell us a bit more about you.
Yeah, so my name is Faith Opio. I am a threat hunter at IBM. That simply means that I proactively go looking for persistent threats within an environment. I have been in the IT space for around 10 years, but specifically in security for the past 5. And I was really excited for this topic because it was something that was not so clear to me. So thanks, Chloe, for the work done today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah. Thank you, Chloe.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. That's it for today. And see you next week. And please join us in all our social media. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.